At what point did the doctors diagnose you with TBI?
Well, unfortunately, it wasn't right away, which was sad because I was brought in and I was brought in and I had bleeding from the back of the head, and because we were at a pub, I was diagnosed with, being at a Lake Geneva strip, or on the Lake Geneva strip, having too much. That was the initial, diagnosis. So they just cleaned the blood off the back, and I had a friend of mine who was with me, and he said no, he was. His name was Joe, and Joe said no, he was fine. He was fine, and they told him, you know what, we'll take care of him. And they threw me in a bed and left me there for 13 hours. And my blood alcohol was actually 0.102, which wasn't, which obviously was, it was probably the equivalency to maybe 3.5 beers in an hour or something or whatever, and for my weight at the time. So it was definitely nothing that would keep you not moving for 13 hours, and they were able to finally wake me up, I guess, and they said, where do you work? And I said, Citibank, and I don't work at Citibank. And they said I had 2 daughters, and I did not have 2 daughters, So when the calls came in, they said, he's fine. He told us, he works at Citibank, and he's got 2 daughters. And he said he doesn't work at Citibank, and he doesn't have 2 daughters. So finally, somebody there decided to shoot me up for an MRI, and they seen the brain was covered with blood. So and they actually didn't have the capacity to handle me. So at that point, they had to figure out a way to either fly me out of that place, or and they couldn't do it because of the weather. So they put me in a special unit and moved me to another hospital. So yeah, unfortunately, because the number one thing you want to do is get oxygen in your system for the brain immediately after something like that, and they didn't. And you never know what that 13-hour lapse or 12-hour lapse, whatever it was, what additional damage they may have caused, but you can't prove it ever did. So there really was nothing there. It's just unfortunate that I was written off like that. So, what are you going to do?
All right, well, let's talk about your book. What inspired you to write your book?
I think a lot of it was I was completely interested in everything I did. Good, bad, or indifferent. It was amazing to hear these things, I wanted to hear about the time I got caught sneaking the car out, and I wanted to hear about the time, I wanted to hear about how I had to be retaught what food was for, because I didn't know. I knew I only asked for Coca-Cola. That's all I ever asked for, but I didn't eat. I didn't have anything to eat. I didn't have any desire for food. I didn't have any, I didn't identify it as something I need to do, And so I wanted to hear all that. It was wickedly curious. I was just completely curious that I was this person, And the weird part is, I know that people who came over to see me or may have seen me might not, in some cases, might have put that together. But for the most part, if I knew you before the injury, I'd say, hello, Monica, how you doing, And I might talk about God knows only what, And but if you weren't around me long enough, your assumption was he's home from the hospital, he's fine, And so you hear about all that, and I knew I wasn't, and I knew what family members were going through with me, and I knew, and I remembered what I struggled with, and I knew once you get one of these, at least in my perspective, I was incredibly interested in it, How many times has this happened to people, and how do they deal with it, and so as years went by, I started to identify some things obviously got better, but some things didn't. And some things, when you least expect it, didn't work anymore. It's like a tool. You got a toolbox and you have 25 different tools in there, and you don't use all of them every day. So 2 years down the road, you go to pull this tool out and it doesn't work anymore, and you never expected that. So, and it worked perfectly fine before the injury. So that's those things coupled with, I know the misunderstandings, and I thought, what? As the years went on, I thought there's no way I'm the only one who feels like this, and there's no way that I'm the only one who deals with this. And then you get the moods and the depression, and you fight it. And I didn't want to take any medication for it because it was my goal to beat it on my own. I didn't want anything. I just said no. For 10 years I refused to have anything, and it was my battle. I'll deal with it, and that was my. I'm not saying that's the right way. That was my adage on it. But as time went by, I thought somebody really ought to write this stuff down. And I never read a book about brain injuries before, and to be honest with you, I didn't want to write a book about brain injuries. I had no interest in writing a book about brain injuries. I just wanted to write a book about what it's like living with this thing. The good, the bad, and the indifferent. when my 14-year-old daughter finally read it, you know, she came downstairs last year and she was crying, and I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I just started reading your book." And I said, "You know, what are you crying about? You know, I gave it to you for free, you know." And she says, "I thought it was a book about brain injuries, and it's not." And I said, "No, it's not." So she got it right away. That's not a book about brain injuries. It's a, you know, I didn't find that to be something that would be interesting. You know what I mean? It is and it isn't. But it's more about everything you were never supposed to do afterwards that you did. I mean, I did everything I was never supposed to. Basically, telling me I can't do it was challenging me to do it. That's the way I looked at it, and I still look at it that way. So